Hello everybody, welcome back to Testimony Tuesday with BJ Garrett, and today I am with Summer Clements. And Summer, welcome to our program.
Thank you.
So just for those of you watching, you have to know that this story is so powerful and the enemy is after it, because this is actually our third time to try and record this, and it's been kind of a nightmare for you. And so we actually, this last time I was just like, Lord, I'm like, Lord, please don't make me call her again. It was terrible. So 3 times a charm. We're gonna rock it this time. Everything, the red light's blinking. We're recording. We've got sound. So let's just dive in, and you can share your story.
Okay. Like BJ said, my name is Summer. I am married to my husband, Chad. We have 2 children, Caleb and Katie Claire. We met through the singles ministry at our church that BJ and her husband Jay led, and that's all part of my story. I grew up in Bryan College Station. I have incredible parents. I'm the middle child. I have an older sister and a younger brother. He is married with 3 kids, and they live out in West Texas. My sister is a truck driver, so she lives in East Texas with a permanent address, but she is all over. Which is perfect for her. She is a free spirit and she loves to travel, so she's getting to see the United States, which is pretty awesome. My dad is retired law enforcement. My mom is a retired dental hygienist. And growing up, they will have been married almost 44 years in September to each other. So that's no small miracle.
It's very rare
this day and age. And growing up, I just had a really good upbringing. I grew up in church. We were there, not necessarily every time the doors were open, but we were there frequently. I mean, more than we weren't, certainly. I have, in my lifetime, at 42 years old, been a member of exactly 3 churches. So it's, and all of those changes just about came with moves. So God's just really blessed me with an incredible church family growing up, and I am just really blessed to have the family I have and the support that I have. So I graduated high school in Bryan, went to Texas A&M from there in the fall of '97, and then in the fall of '99 I actually transferred to SFA in Nacogdoches. My parents had moved this direction. My dad had retired early from DPS, and my parents moved this direction to take care of my aging and ailing grandparents. So moving to Nacogdoches wasn't a big stretch. I knew I wanted to major in something in business. I work in HR, and going to the business school at that point from A&M was not an option. I had struggled a little bit early on, just was pretty overwhelmed. But so I did that, and in the spring of 2000, in the fall of '99, I had to live on campus. I met my future roommate, actually kind of through a crazy thing. We agreed to sign an 9-month lease because we both hate syrup and cold ketchup. The Lord works in very mysterious ways.
The mind of a college student, right?
Yeah. Well, and when you're, we were both. She was an older non-traditional student too. So at that point, I was 20 years old. So we were both like, okay, we got to get out of here. Like, this is too many freshmen. No offense to young folks, but when you've already got a couple of years experience behind you, it's a hard transition to go back. So but we did, and it was wonderful. She was an incredible roommate. She's still an incredible friend of mine. Just really, and all of that is part of God's providence too. He put me with her specifically. So we were real social. We made friends and went out, because that's what you did in Nacogdoches. There's not a lot to do aside from going to the bars and clubs. So we did, but we had groups of friends from other schools, and that's sort of kind of where things began with my testimony. We had a really great group of guy friends that participated in a sport at another college, and when they traveled through, they would often stay at our house, or at our apartment. It was fun. We had all these girls that would pile up of our girlfriends, and all of these dudes would come in, and we would cook for them, so they had a home-cooked meal, and we would watch movies, and then we would just all kind of crash respectively. my roommate and I usually shared a bed, and then they would just kind of have full run of the rest of the place. And because of that, I didn't have any trouble trusting other groups of guys. And so one night when my roommate was out of town, my girlfriends and I had gone out, and we had met a different group of guys involved in the same sport. I didn't think they didn't have a place to stay. I didn't think anything about letting them come stay at our house. I was pretty naive. And we all hung out for a while, and it got time to go to sleep. And one guy didn't really have a spot to crash. I was like, hey, you can come sleep in my bed, but keep your hands to yourself. And I was serious, but it was also sort of a deprecating joke in a way too, because I wasn't a girl that guys typically hit on. I was super awkward. I was not any college student's definition of attractive. I've always been heavier, and I just hadn't really kind of come into my skin yet. And so, but again, I didn't think anything about it. My friends are right out, so
floors me because you're so beautiful, and I've seen you. Speaking about weight, and we'll go back to that, but
Yeah.
I've seen you. I don't know your largest, but I've seen you
Yes.
large,
yes.
and I've seen you not large, and you're beautiful both ways.
Thank
Like your size doesn't define your beauty, and but I mean, like sincerely, it doesn't. You were stunningly gorgeous when you were at your largest, and being smaller doesn't make you more beautiful.
It doesn't, and it doesn't for anybody. Let me be really clear about
For sure.
that. But at 20 years old and awkward, and it doesn't take a lot for the devil to
Absolutely.
attack all of that. And so, and I'm really good at self-deprecation. Sarcasm is the way I hug. I've seen that on a t-shirt, and that's
Yeah.
kind of accurate. But yeah, so I told him, hey, I set a boundary, and all of the things, and he chose to cross that, and he assaulted me. And again, as a awkward, people-pleasing, not wanting to, I don't know, I don't know. It was just, there's so much that goes into all of that I just didn't even think through. That I didn't scream, and I didn't cry out, because I didn't want to wake anybody else up, heaven forbid. Through God's grace and His mercy, I don't remember a whole lot about the actual incident. I do remember some pain, and I remember distinctly that my room got much darker. And when it was over, I got up and slipped into, I had a master bathroom, I had a closet in it, and I literally went and laid in the closet all night and just stared at the ceiling because I couldn't fathom what had just happened. I had no idea what to do with it. The devil came in immediately. As I said, I grew up in church. I was a product of True Love Waits, and good girls were virgins on their wedding night, and I wasn't. Except, let me stop there and say, if you are assaulted or raped or whatever word you want to use, and it is not your choice, that is not the same. And I wish I had a better understanding of that then, because I immediately felt worthless and used and damaged.
The one big gift that you were saving for somebody has just been robbed from you, and
Yeah.
and how to wrap your mind around that as a young college student.
With very little relationship experience. I mean, very little. I really hadn't dated. I had gone out a few times here and there with different guys that never really hadn't been in a relationship, didn't have anything long-term behind me. I mean, I was pretty, again, really naive, and so the next morning came and everybody left, and thankfully my friend came home, and again, God provided. Unfortunately, this is something that she had also been through in a younger age, and so she knew exactly what to do. She immediately loaded me up and took me to the campus health clinic, where I told the doctor what happened, and she asked me a whole lot of questions. I don't even remember that she actually ever did an exam. Again, there's so many things that are foggy, thank goodness. But I remember thinking, she doesn't believe me. She thinks I'm just another girl who made a bad decision and got in trouble. And so, and that was really clear. And so I never filed a police report. I never pursued charges or anything like that criminally. She prescribed the Plan B pill, and I went home and took it because she's a medical professional. And at that point, I could barely process what had happened, much less any potential pregnancy that would have resulted from it. Having now had my daughter, and we went through IVF for her, I am completely confident that I was not pregnant, that there was not conception that night. Praise Jesus. But I now know too that there are lots of women who can't say that and then do struggle with taking the Plan B. And there's a part of me that probably still that did, yeah, for a period of time.
Because you just don't know, and that's the challenge with the Plan B, is because if there was no child, then the Plan B is not necessary. Mm-hmm. But you don't know that, and so if you take the Plan B, the intent of the Plan B pill is to abort a child.
Absolutely.
Should it exist.
Yep.
And that is hard because, again, in that moment of panic, and that's so much what we do when we're facing abortion anyways, is in that moment of panic, we make a decision without fully understanding what it is that we're deciding to do.
Absolutely.
And then after the fact, then we deal with that.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult. And we have had women, as you know, we've talked before, that have come through care that very much know that they did lose a child, yes, through aborting through the Plan B. And so
absolutely. And there was so much shock. I was in so much shock and so much, I was embarrassed, and there's just so much. And I think that that's probably even still common, even if you're making that decision, 2 and 3, 4, 6 weeks later.
Sure.
You're still in shock because that's a big deal.
It's a really big deal.
A life is a big deal. So from that, like I said, I already felt damaged, and so then I started to actually seek out the attention of men because I kind of thought, well, this is all I have to offer, and that led to a lot of bad choices too. Thankfully, God protected me through those too, and I never did get pregnant or diseases or anything like that. But yeah, so I graduated from college. I moved to Tyler to start working, and I met a guy when I was about 24, 25, and we dated for a long time, and I knew that he was going to be my person, and we made plans to get married and all the things. He had a child from a previous relationship, and I loved his child very much, his son, and we just had plans for a future, and I thought, okay, this is it. This is the person God's provided for me. But he had enlisted in the Navy, and he'd already signed his contract before we met. And so he shipped off for basic in May or June after we met. We met in February, I think, maybe. And I never trusted him with my story. And we laughed the first time we recorded this video because here I was willing to marry him and spend my life with him, but I knew better than to share my deep, dark secret.
And really, that's not funny, but it is.
But it is ironic.
The ironic is like, oh, I'll spend forever with you, and I'll be your wife, but you can't know my secrets.
Yeah, and probably a lot of it was him. Some of it was me not wanting to acknowledge it because I felt like, and I didn't. And at that point, I maybe only told 2 other people anyway, because I really felt like if I talked about it, that somehow gave it power, and it made it real. Whereas if I didn't talk about it, I could pretend like it had never really happened, and that wasn't who I was, and that wasn't part of my story, and all of those things. But so we dated a little over a year, and truly made plans. Like, he had planned to propose around Christmas and all of these different things. And then my birthday came after we'd been dating a year, and he called me on my birthday and wished me happy birthday. All of that was pretty normal. And then I didn't hear from him again. And so I was ghosted before ghosting was a thing. He was in San Diego, and he was living his life, and he was still calling his mom and other family members that I talked to, because in the midst of all of this, my best friend at the time and his brother got married because we needed more awkward. We were their witnesses at the JP. It was really kind of funny. But it was just hard. And he was talking to all of these people, but he was not talking to me. And so I eventually wrote him a letter, kind of just called him out. And as much as you can do, pen and paper. But at least it did have some effect, because he did call and he was like, I just don't have room for a girlfriend right now. And I was like, okay. So I was devastated, because again, I felt like, man, that was really easy for him to leave me. And when he chose to leave me, I not only lost this man that I thought was going to be my husband, but I lost this kid that I thought was going to be my son. And I built some walls. And I literally did not date again for probably 9 years. And then around that time, let's see, in 2012, November, I had a friend who passed away with cancer, and loved her dearly. She was full of life, and something in her passing woke me up, and God said, you're wasting it. Here's this mom who isn't going to see her kids grow up, and you're wasting it because you're too daggum scared, excuse me, to put yourself back out there. And he was right. Holy Spirit speaks to me in that way, not out loud. I haven't heard his voice audibly. We had a big conversation about that in another group. But anyway, so I started putting myself out there. I dated a couple of crazies. Around that same time, I had changed churches as a result of some different things that had happened in our previous church, but also move-based. I had literally moved 7/10 of a mile from Flint. The singles teacher reached out, and she insisted that I should come visit via postcard, and every Sunday. And I had refused, because I hated the label of being single at 30-something years old. I would have been 33. And I was like, that is not what is going to define me. I am a director of HR, and I'm an aunt, and I'm this, and I'm that. I am just not single.
I'm a woman.
I'm something else, yes. And so I've refused to attend singles classes for a long time, because people would push me to other churches in the area that have big ministries for that. But it wasn't going to be for me. But on a whim, I said, you know what, I'll try it. I don't know where else to go. And connected with incredible people, connected with you and Jay, and started really attending that in about September, probably August, September. My would-be future husband was going through a divorce. Prior to all of that, he started attending this class too in November. And we would chat here and there, but we really we weren't flirting by any stretch. And honestly, I didn't know what his situation was. He didn't know what mine was. So we just, we would greet each other in Sunday school, small talk kind of thing. We had a fellowship in December, and it involved food, because we are Baptist. And I had made homemade pepperoni rolls, and so when we all got together, we were supposed to all get together, do the scavenger hunt, and then have a party. And when we all got together, several people were already hungry, so I said, well, here, mine are easy to eat, and we opened them up. And Jay Garrett took a bite, BJ's fabulous husband, and he was like, Summer, you're going to make a fine wife one day. And for him, it was a genuine remark, because he's not a sugarcoater and all of that, but it was really just a remark. And what he doesn't know, or he may now, because we have talked before, but in that moment, I suddenly didn't feel used and damaged anymore. And where I had spent so many years wasted feeling unlovable or unwanted, I thought, man, he might be right. And so I very much believed in my soul and in my heart. The Holy Spirit prompted Jay to say it, and he thankfully is obedient and just says what he thinks. Maybe that's not thankful all the time, but in that moment it was, because it literally changed how I saw myself. And later that night, Jay and Chad and I ended up at a table together, and we were sitting around talking about handguns and concealed carry, and I mentioned that I carried a .40, and we kind of laugh now because the rest is history. That definitely piqued Chad's interest. He is a gun enthusiast, and he reached out to me. We started dating spring of 2013. We were engaged by September and married by the next April. And so I had a husband and a 12-year-old. because Chad had a child with his first wife and had a 12-year-old son. And it's amazing. He's wonderful, but blending our family was hard. Some of it is because we had taken advice that was probably good. It's probably good advice for most people, but it wasn't good for our situation. And Caleb and I competed a lot for Chad. I was obviously still dealing with years of rejection, so I felt like every time Chad didn't back me up, and it wasn't even over big things, it was really over the silliest things, that somehow he was rejecting me, which I'd already had enough of. But Caleb kind of struggled with some of that too, because he had some abandonment issues, and so it kind of created a wall. And Caleb loved me very much, as a 12 and 13 teenage, all of those years boys can, but I didn't know how to love him. And physical touch is his love language, and as someone who had been assaulted, it is not mine. I don't know that it was mine even before that, but I am not a hugger. Not generally. I am much better now, but I just I had lots of walls, I had lots of boundaries, especially regarding touch, and that kept me from loving him the way I should have, and the way I wish I had. And so we had Katie in 2016, and that sort of helped bridge some things, because I knew her, I knew how to love her better, and so that helped me love Caleb better. But I was still much more free with words of affirmation, acts of service, all of these other love languages that weren't his. And if you're not speaking your partner or your child's love language, their tank's not getting full.
That's right.
So it wasn't ever about me, although I had made it about me. And we dealt with some things last year. He graduated high school, did great, knew what he wanted to be, so we got him enrolled at TJC, had scholarships and things. And in October, as Chad and I were recovering from COVID, we had some pretty big things fall in our lap, dealing with him, and things that we weren't aware were going on, and we just really had to have a lot of hard conversations. At one point, he came home with the intention of getting his things and moving out, and I was devastated. And I literally put myself between him and the door, and stood there, and was a physical obstacle from him working out. And I should share this, Caleb is 6'3", and a strapping young man. He is a firefighter, so he is built like that. I am not little necessarily, but I'm 5'9", and he certainly is much stronger than I am. So me standing between him and the door is almost comical, because he could have easily moved me out of the way, but he would never have touched me in an aggressive way. And I begged him to stay. And thankfully, Chad was able to intervene and talk to him, and we all had some conversations and figured out that we had a lot of things that we were dealing with that hadn't been said, a lot of assumptions. We had some negative influences outside too. We realized those much later, and their impact. But yeah, it was hard, and it was truly the wake-up call I needed, to love him better. And things are much better now. We talk a lot, actually. We went through a really short season, but a season where really I was the only one he was talking to. Like, he even had a hard time connecting with his dad, and he and his dad have always been very close. But we're better now. He will talk to both of us about different things. A lot of the negative influences have vacated. Praise Jesus. That was some answered prayers, a lot of answered prayers. And so we're much better. And I know how to love him better. A lady in our Sunday school shared that a hug is only good if you do it for like 20-something seconds. And so I would stop him, and I would literally time hugging him.
I love that.
because it was that important to me.
Yeah.
And Chad's love language is also physical touch. I think it is for so many guys, but that's neither here nor there. And Chad and I were affectionate, but I didn't know how to. I would hug Chad because he needed it, not because I necessarily wanted to. And that's not quite the right way to say it. I know how that sounds, but
I get it.
it wasn't a vulnerable hug. I never asked him to hug me. But when we were going through a lot of this stuff with Caleb, I ended up having pretty bad anxiety. In fact, went to see a doctor and started seeing a counselor to kind of help work through all of the things that I suddenly had to unpack. Because somehow in all of this, we were also in the middle of a ministry at our church, and people started sharing, women specifically started sharing that they'd had similar testimonies to mine. And I thought, wait a minute, if they can share this in church, maybe I'm supposed to. And I had done a lot of things to insulate and protect and all of that. I had not shared with my parents. I had really told a handful of people. Chad, of course, knew. Caleb knew, because it did affect some aspects of our relationship. But I really felt the tugging on my heart that I was supposed to share this, and I was supposed to finally own up to it and recognize that it's part of my story and that God gets glory in it because He provided so much through all of it. And so in May, we had an opportunity where my parents were supposed to go out of town, so Chad took Katie out of town, and then my parents' trip got canceled, so I just drove to their house one night and I said, I need to talk to you. And I laid it out there, and they still love me. And they were heartbroken, mostly because I hadn't told them sooner. It was 22 years later. Yeah. And they kind of felt that maybe some of that was them, that they had done something that they didn't feel, that didn't open that communication, and it wasn't them at all. They're incredible people. They've been incredible parents, still are. I just, again, couldn't talk about it because I didn't want it to have power. And ironically, by not talking about it, it controlled so much more. Yeah. So I told them, and of course my dad, as his little girl, he was angry, and then he was kind of frustrated probably with me that I had not filed a police report.
Coming from law enforcement.
Exactly.
But in that, there were very legitimate reasons why you felt like, what was the point?
Yes.
I remember whenever I had finally told about some of my abuse as a child, and I was shut down. And it's like, why would I ever tell anybody else, especially somebody in authority, what happened when my first tell didn't care?
Yeah. So. Well, and it, so many things sound silly, but they're not silly when you're thinking them. They're valid. And I honestly felt like, because I felt so unattractive at that age, especially, that people were like, guys wouldn't even try with her. And so it's like there was something about all of that it's just, Satan twisted it all very much in my mind. And that was something I heard even through, I can remember through like things happening on the national news and people saying, oh my gosh, she's so pretty. That's so sad that happened. And I was like, would it not be sad if she wasn't as attractive? It was just, but it's all this warping that comes from, self-image and body image and all of this stuff and straight from the pit of hell, all of them. But, so it was kind of a crazy deal. But, so they know, when we decided to do the videos, I told my brother and my sister, so they know, and so here we are. In the midst of all of that, I did have weight loss surgery in August of 13, because I realized that was also a crutch, that I was hiding behind that, and I felt like, one, if I got to a certain size, that nobody could hurt me again. If I got to a certain size, then I could make the jokes and nobody could make them for me. And it was just, it was an insulation, it was a protection. But I did have the surgery and I lost weight. But then I kind of got to a point where that was stagnant and I was like, okay, this is just where my body's comfortable. I'm in a good relationship. My husband thinks I'm beautiful regardless. So we're cool. Like, I'm healthy. I don't have any diseases or anything coming. And then when all of this came about and God was really pressing on my heart that I needed to share my story, I was like, oh God, I can't. Nobody's going to believe me. Nobody's going to believe me looking like this. And through diet and exercise, I've managed to lose more weight and a touch of mental breakdown. if we're honest, stress will do funny things to you. And where my defense mechanisms early on in life were to eat more and insulate more and hide and find comfort in comfort foods, that wasn't possible. I physically, literally couldn't do it, even though I had been able to even after my surgery. So it was kind of a weird deal, but I think that's God too.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
Wow, I love you so much, and you know, the fact that Jay and I have the teeniest piece
Absolutely
in your story is such an honor and a blessing. And for those watching, Summer actually has been serving on the board of directors, which is kind of how this came up, because we do these videos and not everybody has an abortion story, but because she's such a important part of our ministry, when you were ready to tell your story publicly, I was like, pick me. So
yeah, I think the Facebook post where I put out there that I felt the prompting had been posted less than 30 seconds when VJ called. So
yeah.
I was like, okay, I guess that's an answer.
Yeah. So, but
Three tries later.
I know, but the enemy does not want this story out, because I know, you know, another young girl, Ashlyn, that's a big part of our ministry too. She shared her, you know, her story of being violated, you know, several months ago, and again, it just gets so much traction because that's real.
Yep.
And we get silenced when
Yes.
we get so silenced by the shame and the fears and all the things that come from that. And so if you're watching this, and whether you've been violated or maybe it's your abortion story that you don't want anyone to know about, please know that this is a safe place to call. And we're not a ministry that helps rape victims by any means, but we do have resources. And especially if your rape resulted in a pregnancy, we would love to be able to help you with that and to process through that. And just please know that no matter what you have done and no matter what has been done to you, there is hope and healing in Jesus Christ. And CARE wants to be a part of your journey through your healing if we can ever help. So
That's right.
thank you for coming again.
Yes, thank you.
The light's still blinking, and I think the sound is all good. So hopefully this will post to our YouTube and Facebook. So please like and subscribe and share and do all the things.
All the
things. So you know the drill. So
Find
thank
a
you.
millennial if you need to help you.
Absolutely. And if you're just, you know, stagnant, it's going to be on Facebook, like me. Like, everybody's like, what's your thing? Like, I'm just a Facebook girl. I accidentally get on Instagram every once in a while, and like, even last time, I'm like, oh, hey, I like that. And so my daughters are like, Mother, please, just go away. But it will be available on YouTube and Facebook, and share. Thanks so much.